Welcome to my channel, everyone. I like to build ball joint dolls and their accessories. Today we're going to be building Bunny Bomb Girl, aka Dr. Boom. This is a 5.5-inch polymer clay doll. Today I'm going to show you how I made her start to stringing. I'm not a professional. I've only been playing with polymer clay for a year and a half, and I've kind of made up my own way to do them. These are molds I've made just to speed my building process along. Most of them are joints and hip beads. There's even one that's a skull. These are the joint beads that I casted with those molds. As you can see, they're pretty round. They've already got a hole through them, so they're a great time saver for me. Even the knee and elbow double bean ones, it just saves so much time. I like to do a skull core. I usually cast it in whatever flesh tone I'm going to do it in. I just find working on the same face base makes everything easier when it comes time to sculpting the face. I've noticed it's definitely helped me get better. These are those same beads all quickly cleaned up. Skull with its little tiny white eyes are already added in. Little pupil dimples are already added. Off to the next. I don't have a neck bead mold yet, so I just make them. I just trim down 2 round beads so they have a flat spot. Little bacon bond, squish them together. Then I'll wrap a little snaky around them and just smooth it out, and voila, you got a neck bead about 1.5 times its width. I like to use oversized leg to hip beads. Makes the range of motion really good. Don't have to do any trimming. Makes for excellent posability. I start this usually by taking the 2 leg top thigh beads and connecting them across, kind of like a cylinder. At the top of the one end of the cylinder there'll be a slightly flat spot, so when I put the waist bead in, I can put it flush with the front beads. This is just a little block. I'm going to cut it. This will be the upper torso. I'll just end up drilling holes center across the length and center across the width like a T. And yeah, I just use it as a core. With the upper torso T core ready to be drilled out, go back into the waist. Here I've added a bead to the top of the cylinder and just kind of made enough of a cup so that it would stay there. The bead for the waist is slightly smaller than the top of the thigh beads, so when you make all 3 of them level at the front, you get a little bit of an arch started at the back. Later on I'll just make a bead that has the same arch, or I'll just take this bead and end up cutting an arch out of the back of it. Here I'm just bulking up the waist, little triangle for the front, just to finish adding that shape I'm looking for. Another little square for the back, give her a little bit of a booty, plus it helps hold all the beads in place, gives them a socket to roll in. Even these going on to the pre-baked, I make sure I put bacon bond on everything. A thin coat, let it dry for a minute or 2 before you stick anything on, and oh, each layer bonds just beautifully. This ends up just making a Y-shaped bead, really. Just think of everything that you're doing as kind of like a candy necklace. It's all a bead. Some have an opening on each end, some have an extra opening, some of them are a T bead, but yeah. Now we can get into working on the finishing the top of the torso. I've already taken that T-bead, drilled out some holes, coated it, got a good general torso shape. Now we're just gonna make it so everybody knows it's a girl. With bacon bond, unfortunately you gotta make sure you play with that material a lot, keeps it warm. I like the sculpty translucent. The Primo's nice. I mix it with the number 3. Stick the arms back in. After it's been baked, we're ready to clothe this poor girl. Bunny outfit, I thought pink would be good. I have a tendency to make my figures in a post-apocalyptic world kind of outfitting. I'm just kind of drawn to it. I like medieval, I like futuristic, so it just gives me all the freedom I like of both. But make sure you get everything in place where you want, because once that bacon bond starts to meld the two together, a minute or two is all it takes, and then you could be really tearing up a piece to try and move it. So kind of got to make sure that you get it down where you want it, and once you pat it down, it's kind of there. I always keep a pair of scissors in my polymer clay kit. They're small, they're cheap, I keep them clean, I just use them for this. Sometimes scissors are the easiest way to snip away something. I don't like leaving marks on the bodies even after they've been baked. Sometimes I use it for crimping, pinching, creating different designs. You'd be surprised how handy a pair of scissors are when polymer claying. You didn't figure out why I have all the beads wrapped in tinfoil so the polymer clay doesn't stick to it. Yes, there's all sorts of tricks and tips that if you're not aware of why I'm doing things, leave a note in the comments. I have no problem answering anybody's questions, so yeah, if anything makes you wonder why I do it, just leave a message in the comments. Here, with the outfit all on now, I can just kind of get those seam lines where the shoulders go meet, and then I'm going to just start shaping it, give it a little bit of a pulled fabric look. I haven't quite got into texturing with different fabrics on the surface, but I'm definitely going to try it out one of these days, that's for sure. Just making it look like the fabric's been pulled a bit, making sure that it's sticking where I really want it to stick, giving it a little bit of a tight appeal. One of the reasons you'll see me build my dolls on these bars like this is they're pretty small. I don't like to smush them. I leave fingerprints in everything, so this means I don't really have to touch them all that much. Any of the details I put in stay really good. I already put a triangle on the front piece, another long kind of filled in Y for the back. This girl doesn't have so much in the form of worn clothing, but I do prefer to form some sort of clothing on the figures. With both the front and back panels now on, I can really give it a good stretched kind of fabric look. I have some chains I'm going to end up attaching the outfit with. So often I actually end up just making something out of my own brain. I like the idea of making things that are popular, but unfortunately I'm really not aware of copyright laws and stuff for that, and I really don't want to get in any trouble. Here I'm making those chains I was talking about that I was going to use for joining up the clothing. just some flattened silver. Made a little squiggly first. Then I indented it a whole bunch with just a small ball stylus. It's a little bit of bacon bond there. Stick it around and then end up reaching for my handy dandy scissors. Now I'll do the same to the other side, and now we gotta do it to her top. It's the little details that make it so much better. Once I get a little more under my belt, more pieces made, I'm definitely going to start breaking out the airbrush and paints. The idea of painting these little things once I've made them, really interesting, but right now I'm just going to concentrate on making a bunch of dolls. I can always get back into repainting them at some other time, because she's part of my little Commando Elite group. She's the bomb girl. Set a little military tags on her. Put the same kind of chain that I attached her clothing with. And a little set of tags. I don't really go in for trying any crazy detail at the moment. I've only been at this a little over a year playing with polymer clay. And I've only been building ball joint dolls for a little over 2 years, 2.5 years. So I'm a novice to it all, but I just wanted to share how I do things. I have no idea how everybody else does. I've checked out some YouTube videos, and most of them seem a little haphazard. My OCD just does not let me do it that way. Make her some little tags. And then the upper and lower body parts are made. Little torso bead. I'll probably just take one of the regular round beads and I'll just end up cutting it to a narrower top at it. If I was to show every step along the way building these things, oh my god, 2-3 hours long. I'll have to do one where I break it all down into parts and I'll leave it in a playlist. That way everybody can just go back and get what they need when they need it. Well, you've made it to the middle. Here's the waist bead that I've carved for her. The movement's really good. I haven't had to do any fiddling or anything like that because everything's made with the piece in place. It's made for that piece. So there's almost never any surprises. Even being 5.5 inches tall, she is a ball joint doll and has really good movement in all her joints. The waist, crunch, lateral, everything moves pretty good. Next we gotta get into building her legs and some arms. Oh, yeah, and a head. And I like to have interchangeable hair, so at least one set of hair. Well, if you made it this far, I hope you watch the rest. Here we'll get right into doing the legs. For bigger parts, thicker parts like legs, I like to build a little tube. It acts as a spacer and as my starting core for when I'm wrapping pieces. Here you can see I've already done the upper thigh, but because she's going to have stockings on, the upper half has to have that translucent all the way through. The bottom half, most of it has to still be whatever color I want to use so that around the joints when they move, you really don't see any color variation. If I just went with a super thin coating around just the skin, it would definitely be noticeable. Plus, doing it this way where the top half's already been made and baked, I can make it look like the stockings are squeezing in a little bit. Not all girls are rock hard muscle builders, some of them are soft. So I wanted to make sure she had that little bit of softness looking in her body. The best place to get that look is in the thighs. I leave a little divot, you can see it right where that little flash comes up on that foiled bead for the knee. I leave a little semicircle. I always put that flash up of the tinfoil where the joint is actually going to bend, so I know where to put that little divot when I'm sculpting the legs. Here we'll set up to do the shins. I cut both pieces at once, so don't make you watch both builds, and that way I know they're equal. If I start with the equal amount of material, I have a better chance of making both parts more symmetrical. I use a lot of finger heat to keep it warm while I'm slowly plying it around. And again, I leave another little dimple right about where that flash of foil comes up. This will end up being a perfect pivot point for it to open and close at. And it also shows me if I'm going to trim anywhere, where to trim. But forming it on the bar with the beads that I'm going to use, I find make the joints sit really good, and I find their rotation less forced. I build the arms exactly the same way as I did the thighs. I've already done the upper arm. She's going to have like long gloves to match her stockings. And I want them to squeeze in a little too. And just like the legs, I cut both pieces I'm going to use just to help with symmetry. It really does make a huge difference. But they're made exactly the same way, and I don't have to put a whole lot of detail into it because I'm going to end up putting a whole bunch of watches on them. Here I'm going to make some hands. My hands are pretty basic, I'll admit. I start with just a mitt. Majority of the time I end up cutting the fingers off for how I join my arms together. I can just leave a mitted hand and put a peg in it like it's its own end bead, like how I do my feet for this size of doll. But I like the opening and closing hands, and I actually find it makes it easier for me to build and assemble. When I'm working with small pieces of polymer clay like this, I end up putting them up and down in and out of my hands a lot, because if they get too warm then they just get gooey. So if you can just let them sit for a minute and then pick them up again, they're already firmer. Sometimes I'll let them just sit for 10-15 minutes. Here we'll make some feet. I've already made one. Try to make the other one the same. I'm not too worried on them being exact, because once I bake it, I'll trim them all up. These are actually going to be cores for feet. Even though I build stuff small, a lot of times I'll build a core piece first to do any final forming on top of, just so that I don't squish or have details go weird. I find it a lot more convenient and predictable for what's going to come out of the oven. But once the feet are actually baked, I'll end up putting the arc I like and making sure the toes line up where they like to bend first, so that way when I wrap them, because I made the pink cores, usually if I'm going to make white feet I'll make white cores. It just makes everything easier. It's just at this point I'm not sure if I'm going to leave some of the face open or not, and I decided not. I ended up wrapping just the whole foot so that I could get a really good shape of the arches and where the toes and everything would be. Here I'm starting to wrap to make it look like the boot. where the laces and everything would go. Again, I pull out scissors. I use scissors so often for this. Probably shouldn't admit it, but I do. But when wrapping thin polymer sheeting around something, it is a better way sometimes than pulling out the knife. Because right now the foot that I wrapped that around in is actually unbaked. So I didn't want to leave any score marks in with a knife. And now I'll do the same with the boot. I wanted to leave it open because I plan on putting laces on. And I want that stocking material to kind of be through the front of the lacing. Usually I would again make the thigh out of white, but because I want that pink in there, I opted to make the whole calf pink, which now that I've made it, I think would have been better if I made it white and just left a channel for me to put some pink in so I could just wrap it. It makes it so I gotta be a little more finicky where it goes in the joints, because as long as it still wraps around the joint, as the knee moves you won't see the pink behind it. And I wanted the boots to end just above the stocking tops, but go around right about where it bends, so I didn't have to put a great big piece in, make it so that it just ends up compromising how much the leg can bend. I find the thinner the legs, the more they can bend. You give a girl some thigh in, unfortunately the ball joint starts to lose a little bit of past 90. But that's okay. Sometimes you gotta make a sacrifice for some chunky boots. I roll myself out a little super thin squiggly worm. I'm gonna cut these and turn them into laces. Yes, it's monotonous, but it's one of those effects that once they're all on there, you're so glad you did them. It is the little details when you're all done that you're so happy that you put in. So never ever cringe away from maybe putting a small little detail in. Majority of the time it makes the world of difference to the most mundane pieces. Because my secret for most of my dolls so far has been to layer simple on top of simple on top of simple, with the last one maybe a little detail. Again, these are 6-inch dolls I make, so a lot of the detail is extremely small. And when there's enough of them, it can almost hide mistakes. Now the only thing I wish I would have done first was, she's going to get a knee pad. And I wish I would have made the knee pad first, so that when I was laying down all the stitches and everything and laying in the boots, that the knee pad would have helped tell me how far out everything should have been. The knee pad turned out okay. It's just one of those things that when you look back on a build, it's like, I should have done it just a little differently. See, I never even bothered leaving any pink. I could have made that whole foot out of white. Saved me some time. Once I put all the laces in, for little bits like this, I got a trick for help keeping them on after I've baked them. I'll usually brush a thin little coat of the Bacon Bond. I use a little paintbrush and I just lightly go over it, especially in the corners where it'll pool. It'll keep everything in place. Now we're going to make some steel toes for her boots. Figured just help give her a little more of a tough girl look. When I have a color it, I'll usually try to make a couple pieces at the same time with the same color. Not everything is always in sequence. But after I'm done making this boot, I'll go on to making the knee and elbow pads. For a majority of my builds, everything's built all at once. The torso, the arms. I work in a paint by number kind of scheme. I'll go through, do all the flesh stuff first, then I'll go through and do all her pink stuff, and then go through and do all the white stuff, which actually ends up being a lot of work when you get down to editing. Here we're going into making her knee pads. I didn't show you making the elbow pads because they're absolutely identical, just smaller. And no use making you see the same thing twice in a row. I end up putting these on top of some bead jigs I use for making shoulder pads and pauldrons, and anytime I want something to go in the oven and it needs to be a bit of a curve. I have these wooden balls, wooden beads that I have on doweling pegs. The way I bake stuff in the oven, it's like a pegboard, and everything stands up, nothing lies down, and all my bars are about 5 inches tall. It makes it really easy for bringing stuff in and out of the oven, and I have multiples of these boards so that if I have thicker items, they won't be baking at the same shortness of time as thinner ones. Here we go, we're going to just stick this knee pad in here. I have a little blob of white polymer clay there. Formed up the knee cap a bit so that when I squished on the knee pad I could do like a fabric-y kind of shaping behind it. That way I have fresh material for that knee pad to bake onto. I had to wrap the other parts so that nothing stuck. This is the arm. Again, we've unwrapped the elbow and we've wrapped everything else. It just got a little dab of fresh polymer clay and some bacon bond. Here we'll make the soles of the feet. They have a smear of bacon bond on them. Everything has bacon bond when I go to stick it, whether it's been cooked already or it's fresh, doesn't matter. And most of the times I'll do my snipping with the scissors. I could put it down, go around with a knife, but I find it takes a lot longer to do that than it does to just snip, snip, snip. I'll show you here when I go to do the sole, the black part of her boot. But scissors are quick. I like them. A little softening of the edges and it's all ready for a big old fat white heel. Just make it so it's all nice and round looking first. Sometimes I've even been known to put bendable toes in. Dolls this size, it's a little hard to do. It's not impossible. It's just tricky. Here we're going to put the big old heel on there. A little squish to make sure everything's perfectly flat between the heel and the toe. Back at it with the scissors. I do find it so much quicker. And this is what the leg looks like with all the foil wrapped off of it. All the pieces shoved together. Here's the arm. Slide it down. I can show you how the fingers will work. Now I didn't show you how to make the fingers. I'm definitely going to have to do a hand video and a foot video. But if you can make fingers that open and close, why wouldn't you? That's just my answer. I have some black here that I just used a bar like this. I just went along and made some lines in the bottom so it had some tread. Because my dolls actually stand on their own. It's just one of the criteria I have. I'm not big for using stands. And I don't like having peg holes in the bottom of my feet. I've already trimmed off the toe here, but this is why I don't like using the knife. I'm okay with it. It's just, I find it so much slower. And I like the edge that the scissors leave me after I cut, because it pinches both the top and the bottom. And because I'm leaving it a little proud, it just looks a little better. Whereabouts this, when you cut it with the knife, you get that almost super sharp edge to it. Here we're going to make some watches. On her forearm, there's going to be 3 watches on each side. Varying colors, different colored bands. She is Bunny Bomb Girl. You gotta have a whole bunch of bombs set up around the place. You best keep track of when they're gonna start making some base. So I figure I'll walk you through how I do the first one. And then we'll zoom through the rest of them. I'm going to have them placed not all in a row, kind of various watch faces out and around her forearm. Some with silver, some with gold, some with just metallic, some with black faces. I didn't want them all to be the same. It'd be hard to keep track of which watch was for which bomb. I would have loved to put a watch right on the wrist too, but if I put it right on the bead, then the hand won't really do any really good swiveling. And even though it's on a ball, believe it or not, the wrist actually has some really excellent posability. Here we're going to start putting in all the bands. I videoed them all, but the gold one showed up the best. So that was the one I used, and it has some little texturing at the end that it's the fanciest out of them all, so I figured might as well just do the fanciest one. Because most of those gold watches with the steel bands, they have those little steel sections in them. I just went through with the razor blade after and just gave them all that little separation. Made it look like she had one of them steel bands on that last watch. The rest of them I just poked some holes in it, made it look like traditional style wrist watches. Fancy one for fancy bomb. And I want to put some like knuckles on her gloves. So I put the knuckles in a silver like a lot of her other accessories for her outfit. I don't usually use a lot of different colors when I make a character. There's a reason for this. I'm colorblind. I see in black and white. It's one of the reasons why I like to actually build them in color, because I have all the colors separated in their bags by labels, so I know what color I'm actually grabbing. It's also why I like to actually build in one color for a bunch of pieces and clean that up and then put a different color down. Here we're going to put some white faces in the watches. I'll only show you the one because we got 6 of these faces to do. It's a little detail, and it actually makes a huge difference in it looking like a watch and not looking like a watch. When something's that small, a little detail can fool the eye into making you think it is what you want it to. Here's with the knee pad on and the soles on the boots. And this is what it would have looked like without the watch faces. You would have had to paint all that. Well, if you stuck it out this far, you've seen how we build the torso. And now we've built the legs. This is the point where I usually feel like I'm about halfway done the doll. I always build in this body first, legs next. And it just lets me do everything in a systematic way. Now it's just a matter of doing arms and then doing a head. And the whole time I have the finished torso already standing there for me. I wonder if I can get her to stand on one foot. The joints are stiff enough that balancing's not such a problem. I think if I had her arms on, I probably could get her to do it. Her bending and functionality is actually really good already. But now that we got some legs on our girl, we should really think about pulling out some arms to check out. We did all that work making them. When they're all done, they'll look like this. We still have a long way to go before we get to this point, though. There's some drilling out to do. Don't really have to do any fitting or sanding, but there's a lot of drilling. But for that, you get a doll that has some really good articulation with very little binding. And this peg system I use for the arms make it so you can take arms off and on, have alternate arms. Because I can't take my hands off, for some soft goods, this is the only way I can manage. I'm developing this into a wing though. But that's enough talking. Let's show you how far this looks with the arms on. Once you're done, they'll be able to just slide in and out like this. Even though it's a peg that keeps the arm in, it rotates in the spot really smoothly. And because of the peg, it actually is stiff. It really doesn't move unless you pinch that shoulder bead to move the rest of the arm. But we also are going to need a head. This is what we're going to go into next. I'm still learning how to make faces. I've only made 6 of these dolls. So each of my face sculpts is getting better and better, but I'm still working on it. I like to have multiple hairs for my girls to wear. This is a messy one. She's a bit of a dancer, so I've got to have some messy mop hair. We'll go in and I'll show you how to make this hair with the bunny ears on. I'm going to end up making a second set of hair at the exact same time, but I won't show it till the end. But they're going to have identical bunny ears on it. So she'll have messy hair and combed hair. I like making ball joint dolls. And if you like watching people make ball joint dolls, then maybe hit a like, smash that subscribe, because I'll definitely be making more of these figures. And now we need a head. Well, I had the head with the skull with the eyes already in them. So now let's give them some red pupils. Yeah, I think that'll go good with Bunny Girl. Give her some bloodshot eyes. The reason I cast a skull and put these little eyeballs in it is so that I can get better. Here I've already skipped through to my face sculpted. It's a simple sculpt, but it's something I'm still learning, so I'm not really all that comfortable showing off how I try to do it. Plus it takes me forever. They are getting quicker, they are getting better, by far better. But I find having them on the skull makes it a lot easier to improve with each one I do. I have to put a little blob in where the neck goes, just so that the bead will have a good seat to sit in, and it'll just make the transition from the bead to the head look a lot more natural. The head's actually going to end up riding on the peg, so I just need a good socket for it to hook up to. And it doesn't do a lot of pivoting on it, so I can keep it a little more sculpted than practical. Sometimes I have to sacrifice a sculpted look for a practical joint. It really hurts when I have to, though. I have strung my heads to the dolls in the past. It gives me a little bit more head movement. But for these smaller dolls, I really like having this head that can go off and on a peg. It lets me change up their heads to helmets, and it also lets me put articles off and on like chest plates or capes or anything of that matter. Here we're going to put some eyebrows on her. I'm still not much into painting polymer clay yet. I don't really have all the necessary equipment for it. I do have some paints, some brushes, airbrush and that, but I don't have all the necessary stuff to do it right, so I just haven't even bothered starting. I do most of the work that I need to do all in the polymer clay color. I have done a little clear coating on eyeballs and stuff like that just to get a little shine, but nothing too extreme. I'm really fond of the idea of putting a skull mold together that's got the eyes already formed in it, the back of the head's as round as they need to be, maybe some dimple spots to where the ears would go, just so that I can almost set it up with a interchangeable swappable faceplate. That way I'd have that back of the head mold already set up. But right now that's a little beyond me. But eventually, you always gotta have something to aim for. But at the moment, I wanted to learn how to make wings. Now with the head already done, I can wrap it in foil and I can start making that messy hairdo mop she has. First I start by putting down a base head cap, something in a color that's going to be friendly for the hair I want to put on. Basically what her roots would be, like her eyebrows, white. I'm going to put a nice thick heavy band of this pink across to be the headphone band. Believe it or not, I'm going to be doing two of these at once. I'm only going to show you one. But I wanted her to have a whole lot of colorful hair. So I laid out a bunch of colors, and I like to let them cool down so that when I cut the thin pieces, they're not all mushy. So that they're more like string. I made up some headphones, took that same pink, made basically the round parts, cylinders for each side. I'm not too worried about having them fully round. I don't mind a bit of an octagon shape to them. I've already made one earphone. We're going to do the other one. Make the pad here, a little black with a hole. Believe it or not, the hole will actually slip over the ear and help keep the hair in place. I'll cut this just a little farther out. I know I usually like to use scissors, but this is a small piece. Then I'll go around after and I'll try to make it as round as possible. And I actually didn't just make two of these, I made 4 of these for her other set of hair too. This girl doesn't go anywhere without her music. Every doll I make has a backstory. And well, Dr. Boom, she likes her music. And if the bass ain't loud enough, well, a couple sticks of dynamite will change the tune. Now with her headphones securely fixed upon her head, we'll have to start getting ready for her hair. Take little slivers off of each of those colorful blocks behind, and I put them all together, and then I roll them out and squish them. Then I run some lines down them so they get like that hair texture to them. And I'm pretty haphazard when I put it down. Now this is her messy head of hair. Most girls I make will have 2 sets of hair. They get one bed head or messy hair, and then one fancy hair. Give it some twists and wisps and lift some of it. And it's going to be truly messy hair. We're going to have her bangs hanging down in front like she's been dancing up a storm. Maybe she lost her hair elastic. But she kept dancing anyways. Just make it look and fall a little more natural. Because I am going to want to be able to see some of her face. Not that I do the best faces. But still, don't want everything in her eyes. Here we'll start doing the ears. These go on top of her headphones. Give her that party girl kind of look. Keep it a little more comical. I like a cartoony look to my characters. I'm not really into trying for realism. Push down some lighter pink into the darker pink, just so the inside of those ears look different. A little bit of contrast goes a far way. Around the mouth, so they're a little curved out a bit. So a little on the cute side. Not everything needs to be scary. This here is my fitting elastic. I've used this to join together a dozen ball joint dolls. First, I drill out all the pieces. Now what you're not seeing me do here is change up drill bit to drill bit to drill bit to drill bit. I don't go straight in with the fattest one. I slowly work my way up so that I don't put too much pressure on the polymer clay and crack it. I'd rather drill it out 5 or 6 times from a thinner one to a wider one than to try and force the wide one and have it crack after all this work. I do have some patience. But that test elastic that I made, and that little tool right there is a Dremel little cone shaper. Oh, it is worth it. I bevel every drill hole that I do with that little cone just to soften the edges. The reason I put all these on a test fitting elastic is to make sure that all my mobility works. Plus it also lets me know that my hole channels are straight and can accept it or don't need to be drilled out any further. And after when I'm done, when it's all strung up on the test elastic, it lets me size the elastic I need to cut. It's surprising how a little change in tension can go from having a floppy doll to a doll that's so tight that you can't really move the joints. Here I'm drilling out the hip bead. I end up drilling a couple little holes along where I would cut the groove, so that I just have to go through and kind of connect the holes and smooth out the groove hole. After which, I drill it out another time to just help clear it all out. I test the passageway with the bar, because that steel bar, if it fits, it's about perfect for the elastic. I drill out my last biggest hole on the one end of the bead that doesn't have the slits for the elastic to move around, so I can glue in this little piece of tubing. It's actually a stir stick. I cut it short so that I get this little stumpy peg that I can pass the elastic through. That little peg goes into the thigh. With it going into the thigh, it makes it so when you go to move the leg, that it controls the top of the thigh. I'll build the exact same one for a shoulder, and that's how I get my interchangeable arms. I won't show you how I do the shoulder one because it's identical to this hip bead, just extremely small and hard to get on camera. But with that pin going down that tube, it makes it so when you go to move the leg, everything moves a lot more natural, and it guarantees that hip joint not being as floppy at the thigh to the ball. I like doing stop animation with my characters a bit, so the tension in that hip joint keeps it all from flopping over. Here we're into the knee bead. The knee bead is kind of like the shoulder bead. It needs to be drilled out. I drill halfway down to where I want to cut the slits, and then you need to cut a slit on each end of it, just like we did for the one end of the hip bead. Now when I drill out the knee, I like to leave the passage hole just a little on the tight side, so the elastic gets through easy enough, but if it's going to sit anywhere a little stiffer, I'd rather it be in the knee than in the thigh or in the shin. The elastic needs to really move easily within the shin and in the thigh. I oversize the hole for the ankle also. I make sure I put some really good chamfer bevels on it. And that will give me almost all the movement I need in the ankle. I'm kind of aware of how much I cut, because I really don't want a whole lot of these passageway holes for the elastics to show up in the figure when it's standing or being used. Now the foot had to have an extra peg, little pinhole go through. I actually use a push pin. Now when I'm drilling this hole for the pin to go through, I make sure it goes center through the hole. And you don't want it at the bottom of the hole in the foot that goes to the heel. You want it about halfway. You need a little space at the bottom of that hole. So this little through the ankle hole is about halfway down that space. Here we're making that neck bead. It's got a peg that'll go in the top, very similar to how we did that little one on the hip bead. But when we're done, there's going to be a loop hanging out of the bottom of this. And the loop is going to be for what the elastic for the legs to go up and over and into. Most of it's sitting in there with just tension. And the loop that has to hang out, I like it to hang out a little bit down the torso. I have a drill bit I use for the same space each time. Consistency when making these things seems to be the secret. So I consistently make the neck bead almost identical every time. Sometimes it's a little thicker, sometimes thinner, but always the same. Once I tie off the knot, a little crazy glue down that tube, make sure that everything is going to stay right where it needs to be. Let that all dry up good, and then we can see where it's going to sit. Now, this elastic cord, I just get it from Walmart. You can get it from any sewing department. It's just that elastic cord you use for in clothing. I stretch it to where I feel a good tautness, from the center to where I think my pin's going to slide in the ankle on my feet. Now, the way I build my elastic setup for my dolls is it ends up being a figure 8. So I'll just keep bending this over on itself, marking 4 equal lengths along this elastic. Then when I'm done, I take each of the ends hit a little heat to them so they don't shrivel and frizzle. And I fold them over and I sew them both in the center to give me an H shape. With a little bit of wire on each end, I can start stringing them through the neck bead. This is where that little loop comes in handy. With the figure 8, I know it's right in the center, and I'll feed it right down the torso top. When I do this, I try to make sure, oh, yeah, it wasn't quite big enough, so I had to drill it out one last time, just enough, because I don't like it to be too tight. You need that elastic to be able to move around, so if you've got to drill something out a little more, drill it out. It's better than fighting with it afterwards. Now when I feed my elastics through, I like to keep the left on the left side and the right on the right side. I really try to do this. The tension on the dolls keeps everything even. If they start binding and twisting inside the body, then when you go to make sure the lengths are even per side, one actually ends up being longer than the other, and you never get the same joint tightness on both sides. But once everything's drilled out, the doll flies together. Here you can see I'm keeping those elastics the same length each side, keeping that tension equal. Now you can really notice those hip beads, the little peg that's coming out. Right there you can actually see how straight everything's going to stand. But everything will fly together really quick at this stage. I wish the whole doll building experience could be this quick. Here's that little stiffness through the knee I was talking about. I do prefer it to be just a hair stiff there. Because once you're all done stringing up a doll, you got to kind of distribute the tension throughout the doll by stretching parts out so that the elastic is evened up, slack in some places, taut in others. But here's how that foot of mine works. These are just normal little push pins, little sewing pins. Use them for the sewing machine, pin things in place. I like the ones that have a head on one side. You don't have to use one with a head. You could cut it off at the head and slide the pin in, and it would almost become invisible except for that little ankle hole. I don't mind having the little pin head showing. It makes it easier for if I've got to take the doll apart or anything. These locking forceps, I have 2 pairs, and I find them indispensable when I'm stringing my dolls together. I actually have one I keep beside a magnet, so that when I need to pick up the little metal pieces, I can just touch it to them. I don't even have to clamp it on. But because of the way the elastic is, it's doubled. And there's a little loop at the end. And that loop is where that little pin that we just cut sits in, so that the loop pulls on that pin, and that's what keeps the foot in place. That's also why I can actually put soles on the bottom of my feet so that my shoes look as real as I possibly can. And at this stage you can already see, like, there's no fitting, no sanding. The doll moves well, and I chalk it all up to that bar system I build them on. Here we're making that shoulder that's identical to the hip bead with the shoulder and the bar on it. It's just so small that I didn't do a whole lot. If you're interested in how to build this, it's just a smaller bead, but the same as the hip bead. Each one, again, they get drilled out, but I don't have to go as big with the drill bit in this one. I think each one goes up 3 different sizes. Although with a lot of the joints, especially like the elbow one that is so small and so thin, I don't rush drilling it. I do prefer to use a little hand drill. I find power drills are way too fast, and you can't control how deep or if it starts to snag. Here we're going to just cut those little access holes for the elastics to move in and out for when the knee bends. Here's that forearm with all the watches on it. We'll drill it out too. Again, I don't go too quickly. I'd rather go slow on these and not split them and break them after all the work. And there is a lot of drilling. I end up drilling for a whole day just to assemble one of these dolls. The hand again, I drill up through it. Fingers are already cut off. And I just want to make sure I don't snap it. So I go up in small increments and drill bits. I like to run a drill bit across the palm where the fingers will pivot, just so that it has a nice, really round spot to a channel for the fingers to sit in. With all our pieces drilled out, our shoulder made, time to start stringing them. Unlike the thigh, we left the peg out instead of going in. This gives us something to actually plug into the shoulder holes. It's tied off exactly like how we did our neck one, except there's no loop. It's just the elastic going up in with the knot and a bunch of crazy glue poured down its tube hole. I try not to make things too complicated. It's actually, everything's really simple. If I pull up on the elastic, I can lock onto them with the forceps. And this is why I like to do the fingers the way I do. I actually have just a little pin that slides down a hole and through that loop. Now that loop is hidden inside the foot, but here on the hand you can actually see that loop that I'm talking about, that the pin slides down into, be on either side of it. Stretching the elastics just so everything can sit. I don't reef on it. If you pull hard enough, you can pull that knot out of the top. But that knot with the crazy glue can actually hold some fair amount of tension. Arms, tails, yeah, there's a balancing degree. Too much tension, it doesn't move right, deforms the pieces. Not enough tension, and it's just floppy and doesn't do anything you want. Now for this doll, I actually did end up making a second pair of shoulder beads and having to make a slightly shorter version of those elastics. Now here's the show off. I do like to make soft goods. If soft goods are also something you're interested in, drop a comment. Drop a comment if there's anything along the way or something that you wish was explained better. I would gladly make another video just for that. But now you can see why I had to have it so her arms came off and on. I can't make it so my hands come off and on. And I can't get my hands down those sleeves. So just feeding the arm up the sleeve was a much easier thing for me to do. I wanted a lab coat. Lab coat's got pockets. And if I got pockets, then pockets have to work. It's just the way I am. When I was growing up, my action figures were 12 inches tall. Were called G.I. Joe. And they had all sorts of gear. And well, I couldn't be any more different now. I love having all sorts of accessories for my figures. Growing up, I'd make stuff for my figures. Even now, when I build a figure, I have to have all sorts of stuff for them. I like to have interchangeable hairs. If I have a jacket, I want to be able to put that jacket off and on. If I've got a backpack, I want to put stuff in that backpack. If I have a belt and it's got little pouches, well, guess what? I want to put stuff in them little pouches. My guns need to have their own holsters. Knives need to have sheaths. Swords have to have scabbards. And in a lot of the smaller goods I build for my dolls, I do this also. Now I'm definitely going to be making a retreat for all these figures I'm making because they're going to start building up soon. I've got 6 of these ones plus whatever I've built before, and they need a place to hang out. They're starting to take up space. So eventually I'm going to end up building a dollhouse for these girls, which they're 12 scale, so I'm going to be able to have some fun with that. I'm going to be posting it to the site, so if it's something you like, then maybe subscribe for when it pops up, you see it. I'm also into building furniture too. My wife's an avid doll collector, and she can't wait for me to build more stuff. And because this is Bunny Bomb Girl, she had to have a bag of explosives. Had a rope that's same color. I have some, this directional grenade. It actually has the feet that pop out so you can put it in the ground. She's got a slew of different grenades. Pineapple, the round ones, fragment grenades, smoke grenades, landmine, and just some other stuff too. I think I made some smoke grenades. And eventually I like to get to the point where I could print off all sorts of labels for these and glue them on and off, but I'm just starting in this hobby right now, and I just like to build the dolls at the moment. I'm getting into their accessories, and as I build more and more, like some of the grenades were really good, so I'll probably end up building a mold for those grenades. There's her pink rope to go with her outfit. But like I said, I like my stuff to be usable, so the bag's got usable straps, it's got magnets across the top, close the bag with, shoulder strap. But I also like to build these accessories. I had to build her at least one weapon. A machine pistol seemed right. The strap's nice because I can wear it on the outside or the inside of the jacket. Made a little silencer. I can shove it in the bag when I don't want it. But nothing too bulky. And it's easy to put off and on because the heads come off and on. For a lot of accessories, this is going to be amazing. Like if you want to put scarves on them, balaclavas, or even just some girly necklaces. I really have become addicted to making these things. So if you've lasted this long, then you're actually interested in making them or like to make them yourselves. Maybe think about give me a like and a subscribe. That way you'll know when I'm bringing the next thing out. I did say thing because I'm always building stuff. I'm going to be building the dollhouse for all these girls to hang out in. They're going to need furniture, and I've even built a ride for one, so some riding mounts for others are definitely going to be in the future for me to build. And if you'd like to check out those, then yeah, I'm definitely going to be sharing them. Well, until next time, let's all see what else we can bring to life.